Well, this is the Encounter Faith Podcast. Welcome, everybody. My name is Ross, and I am very glad you're here. I also did my introduction there different than I normally do. It completely threw me off, but no matter...
Jumped right into it.
I did. It was weird. Things got weird, and we're only just begun. I'm here with Pastor Elisabeth. Pastor Elisabeth, welcome.
Hi.
You nailed it, just like rehearsal. Good job. But what you and I are going to talk about today, we have just kicked off this Revelation series, and we're spending all summer going through Revelation. And I think there's a good segment of people, even people who go here, who hear that and go, really?
Yeah.
You know, all summer?
Yep. Are you sure?
On the dragon book. And I want to be clear, like, I really get that.
Yeah.
But where I want to start the conversation, because I think I've come to believe that this study is really meaningful, that I'm really glad and excited that we as a church are going to have some of these conversations we're going to have, is because you went through a journey like this. You are, to take folks behind the curtain, like you helped map out sort of what this series will look like for us.
Yep.
You dove into Dr. Scott McKnight's book. He spoke here at Good Shepherd to kind of help lay this foundation for us. The journey you go on there is, I think, instructive for folks because as a pastor, as someone who works here, that led to you teaching a deep dive class on a Tuesday.
Right.
In the way that for the average congregant.
I'm just a few months ahead on the journey.
Correct.
It's like, you know probably more than anyone that I just am like in the hallway like, oh, I had this thought about Revelation.
Yeah.
Like that's been me for probably 3 months.
Yeah, which I love. And my hope here is how that looked for you helps folks go, oh, I am going to get out of bed and come to church, even though it's summer and even though the weather's really nice. Like, what was that like to go from, for you, of even just over the past couple of months, Revelation is this, forgive the bad pun, beast at the end of the Bible, to something you're actually excited to stop your coworkers about and talk about?
Yeah, when I talk to other pastors and church leaders and say like, oh, we're doing Revelation this summer, they kind of laugh.
Yeah.
Because most churches that kind of do sermon series, they pick something lighter in the summer, summer themed, summer at the movies.
Yeah.
Like we picked Revelation.
Yeah.
And I chuckle because like it was my idea. I was in the teaching team meeting and I said, how about Revelation? And the story behind that is because like I looked at what our teaching series had been for the last 5 years and I mapped out what books of the Bible we had taught on over the last 5 years at Good Shepherd. And I was like, what haven't we taught on in 5 years?
There you go.
How about Revelation?
That's awesome. I love that it was that like practical.
It was like that practical for me. And then like, because then I had the idea, I mapped a draft sermon series and then it became my job to fully flesh that out. And as I started to do that and, you know, I knew Scott McKnight's book and had not read it fully, but knew it in part. And so I was like, I think this would be really good. We added it to the calendar. Everyone agreed on it. And then I started reading it and I was like, oh, wait. This is way more than we can accomplish in a 20-minute sermon.
Sure.
30 minutes for some, 20 minutes for others. And it's just way, like you just can't accomplish it. And
sure.
There's just so much going on, especially with the idea that the images in Revelation are biblically based. Like the more you know the whole of the Bible, the more Revelation makes sense. And if you don't know those symbols, then you got to spend a lot of time in a sermon going through Daniel and Ezekiel and Genesis and like working your way back through these other stories that people aren't familiar with so that they know. Like I got like 5 chapters into McKnight's book and I was like, yeah, I think we need a deep dive on this. And I think it's going to be me too.
Yeah. I was there.
That's how that went.
I was going to say, I was there. That's exactly how that went. I love that though, because I think it mirrors what I hope the average person from this community feels, which is basically, I care about the Bible. I care about scripture, but there is this book that I don't get. Turns out it's because my church hasn't talked about it in 5 years.
Well, I feel that from our congregation that like we have people at Good Shepherd that want to know the Bible and love studying the Bible. And that's part of what I love as a pastor is getting to teach people who like want to know the Bible nerd stuff.
Right.
Revelation's like the ultimate Bible nerd book, and I feel totally inadequate to be able to teach it. But like, that's part of the journey of the last few months has been like, well, I'm just a few months ahead. So like,
sure.
Let's see what happens.
What I'm curious about, yes, we've created this space for this class, which I hope people take advantage of. Does it free you up as a pastor to know I can't actually tackle this in 30 minutes? There's no way to actually tackle this in 30 minutes. So yes. I get to like, just give it a try. Like how does that compare to a message around, child discipleship or something that is easier to make more formulaic?
Yeah. I think because Revelation has so many layers and so many different directions, that I think for me, the idea of having a deep dive class is like, okay, if you really want to know more, you have a space for it. Mm-hmm. But everyone's going to get something out of Sunday mornings, because even just dipping our toe in the water of Revelation we're going to get more familiar with it. But with anything in the Bible, when we're trying to understand it, we have to go over it again and again and again, especially in Revelation, but that's true of the whole Bible. Right. So even if you're someone that hasn't read the book of Revelation at all, just having the sermon series and being more familiar with these images and these concepts and these themes that throughout all of Scripture are helpful. And as a pastor preparing a sermon, knowing I don't have to tackle it all and just kind of sit and be like, what's the best takeaway for the most amount of people? And then feel like all the additional thoughts that I learn along the way have a space to be released to those who want to go deeper is really helpful. And I'm glad we're doing that, because it'll be good for all of us that are kind of doing both, or even people that only preach on Sunday. Tara Beth's only going to preach on Sunday, but she's going to have all this extra material that
she can hand off,
pass along. Yeah. And that's going to be really helpful.
Because it's something that I think it was kind of the original thesis of this podcast, was basically giving you guys like an additional 30 minutes, right? Was going through the cutting room floor type stuff. But I think what's so intriguing to me about Revelation specifically is it's less about, oh, this isn't necessarily relevant, or, oh, this isn't the most in line, and more, if we go here, then we have to go to these other 12 places, and that we for sure don't have time for, right? Like you could do 40-minute sermons on Revelation, but those additional 10 minutes turn into, well, now I have to talk about 6 hours worth of more material.
No, you can just stick with the biggest image, the biggest symbol. And we're kind of going this summer in our sermon series, we're going through the book of Revelation, but it's not going to be chapter by chapter. It's kind of movement and theme at a time, so that you're not just looking at like the same kind of ideas being repeated over and over, the 7 scrolls and the 7 trumpets. We're not going to spend 7 weeks on each trumpet. Right. Just kind of the idea of judgment and restoration, and the idea of worship being central, and what are those central ideas as we move through the book. And that's going to be helpful, because you're going to get those big ideas without getting so inundated in the weird images. Yeah.
What I'm curious about then too is the church that makes the decision to do summer at the movies. The bet that they're kind of making is folks are going to travel. Folks are tired from the year. Yep. So we're going to kind of take our feet off the gas a little bit, because we need to give people enough so that when those who are around, they still have something, but those who aren't, they don't feel like they miss. Yeah. Right. Yep. And if you're a part of that church community, I'm not trying to trivialize the amount of work that goes into making a summer at the movies series happen. It can still be quite a bit of work.
And they can still be great.
Yes. But I like the fact that, personally, I like the fact that we've made a different bet. Yeah. Which is,
and we've gotten in a rhythm as a church of walking through a book in the summer. Right. We've done something different. And even as you were just you were leading me into that comment. But I was thinking about how like Revelation challenges us to resist the systems, cultures, waves, currents of culture that pull us away from God. Sure. And even the rhythm of slowing down in the summer, easing up in the summer can be one of those rhythms of culture where we take our foot off the gas of our relationship with God and our commitment to God.
Yeah.
And Revelation is a book that challenges our commitment to God over all else. And so doing it in the summer is kind of feels like exactly what we're being challenged to do in this
Totally.
book.
I feel that in the stage of life that I am as a parent with your young kids being home for the summer, there is that like, you know what, let's do 2 movies a week rather than 1 movie. Yeah. There is some of those boundaries that get pushed.
I mean, things have to shift, like
for sure.
Things have to shift, and it's a good thing.
But what I like about what you're saying there is, and folks, you know, my friends at Awana would talk about, like, the summer is actually like the most important time. Mm-hmm. Like that's actually where you have the most opportunity to be laying a foundation for the year. And we usually kind of get that backwards as a culture, because what it leads me to for you is, you know, this is something that I love, the idea of how Revelation came out of this kind of like, 1, practical observation, but then 2, a very genuine, like, open curiosity that you had, which I think mirrors what a lot of our people have. Mm-hmm. And I got a chance to talk to Scott McKnight, and folks heard from him this past, as we started this series, for folks who are listening to this in real time. But one of the things that I wanted to ask about was a theme that came from the book. I know it's a theme that's going to be coming up from the series. He talks about, you know, Babylon is timeless. And he told this very like classic author story where it's like, you know, my publisher gave me a little keychain that said Babylon is timeless. And I was like, that is a very specific gift. But one of the things that he talked about, these themes of wisdom, witness, and worship, for us to recognize how Babylon is timeless, it forces us to recognize how we have let, kind of like what you were just saying, our own culture creep into our own lives as individuals. Mm-hmm. And I'm always really like enter these types of conversations with fear and trepidation, because I feel like as a parent, you get very little messaging that's like, hey, you're doing a good job. You get mostly messaging about like, hey, you could be doing better. Yeah. And hey, you should be doing this with your kid or whatever. And so I'm really trying to not go there, dear listener. But my curiosity here is, when you hear Scott or any of these folks, or as you're diving in to prepare for the class and you're reading some of these folks about Revelation, there's an inherent challenge that's presented to these 500 or so Christians in Rome, that worship is the best response to this oppression. Mm-hmm. Worship is the only logical response. Mm-hmm. That witness in the face of all of the different obstacles that they're facing is actually not only the right thing to do, it is the most effective and really only option available to them. Mm-hmm. And that's hard for people who have begun to think of Babylon as, well, you know, it's good that the roads are paved. Yeah. It's good that this thing happens and this thing is easier. Yeah. I'm curious what it looks like for you as a person and as a pastor to have to navigate some of that tension for yourself of, I've inherited some of Babylon. I've benefited even from some of Babylon. Yes. But I know that I have a separate calling and a separate citizenship.
Yeah. One of the kind of section of scripture that McKnight mentioned when he was here and preaching really gives us this image. I was thinking about this just this morning, so it's the first that comes to mind, but gives us this image of what happens when Babylon falls. That when Babylon falls, there are ships, and this is talking like in context for the Roman Empire, like Rome falls. That's like what Revelation is stirring up here, and that like on the seas, like near the docks, ships are waiting, and the ships are filled with every possible good imaginable, even human lives. And it like these couple verses just like list gold and trees and like everything that you could imagine. And part of the critique in that moment is the economic prowess of Babylon, the economic might of Babylon, that it amasses everything that you could ever want in a product, even at the expense of human lives. And that when Babylon falls, the kings of the world mourn because they're no longer benefiting economically from Babylon.
Thanks for listening. We'll be right back.
The Encounter Faith podcast is made possible by VBS at Good Shepherd. What do I mean by that? What I mean is that the generosity of this community that makes it possible for us to engage in a weekly discipleship-oriented conversation also makes it possible for us to have the best week ever of summer, Vacation Bible School Week here at Good Shepherd. This year, 2026, the week runs from Monday, July 13th through Friday, July 18th, and it is something you don't want to miss. Dear listener, I am here because of VBS. My oldest, several years ago, when we were in a season of looking for a church home, she had come to a VBS here, had a great week, and when we were trying to find a place to belong, she said, why don't we check out that VBS church? So I'm not saying that if you come to VBS this year, you're going to wind up hosting a podcast here a few years later. You might, but it would be weird if that happened twice. But I know for a fact that you and the kid in your life are going to have an amazing experience. I can't recommend VBS here at Good Shepherd enough. The team that puts this on, the GS Kids team here, does an incredible job helping every kid feel like they belong. If you go to our website, gshepchurch.org/VBS, you're going to get all the information you need between what session is going to make sense for my kid, morning or afternoon, and also ways for you to serve. By serving at VBS, there's a ton of benefits, including getting a front row seat to how kids are exploring the nature of God, learning more about themselves, and having the most fun along the way. So get all the info you need and register today at gshepchurch.org/VBS.
That image came to mind for me this morning, and as I was getting dressed, and I was thinking about like the clothes that I choose to wear and how we live in a world so interconnected that, like, if Babylon is everywhere all the time, every empire, every government, every nation has echoes of Babylon in it. And so as I live as an American in the United States, I benefit from a nation that has done really well.
Right.
And is economically powerful and has clothes that are affordable for me,
Sure.
that I can just like change and go buy more really easily and not have to worry about the expense because someone around the world is in a sweatshop, like not making enough to have even purchase the clothes that they're making.
Right.
And I think like Revelation pushes us to think about things like that, which is really uncomfortable, but it causes us to think about the ways that we produce waste and excess, economically, and also like in entertainment and morality, and the people and things that we allow to influence us. Like, we've spent a lot of time talking about social media, but we can go that route as well, of the ways that social media like blinds us to our own imperfections, and our own lack of control, that Revelation really like heightens. The focus of Revelation is not humans. It's about Jesus and Jesus's ultimate victory. And how do we wrestle with the fact that we don't actually hold the power? Revelation really, really calls that out for us. And just thinking individually, I am challenged and convicted that like, oh, I am benefiting from Babylon in ways I'm taking for granted.
Yeah.
And what does that mean for me? How do I live more intentionally?
Yeah.
Because it's not possible for us to just say, let's throw out all of our closets and do so. Like,
no, it's a helpful
that's not
example.
The call, but it's a way to say like, okay, can I be more intentional with the way that I'm using my money and the way that I'm choosing my clothes, that I am paying attention to, like ethics and fair wages and things of that, because like the way of excess is the way of Babylon.
Sure.
And those tiny little things, like God cares about those things. Like that's part of Revelation, and talking about Babylon is not just the like immorality, spiritual warfare type of aspect, but it's also the material.
Yeah.
And that God cares about how we interact with the material world as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that that's where you went, because I think one of the keys for folks who are going to be walking with us this summer is actually we find more of those granular ways that revelation is applicable to our lives. Mm-hmm. Because as Scott said when he was here, it's like, yes, there's these big, almost sci-fi epic level depictions all throughout this book.
Yep. But
fundamentally, this is a book about discipleship.
Yeah.
And like any other practice, being more aware of that, of your impact with the material world is not something you're always going to get right. Mm-hmm. And I would also argue that some of the more stereotypical, progressive responses to some of what you're describing can be as unhelpful as not paying attention to it at all. Mm-hmm. Because of what you just said, which is when we go, let me take the time to grandstand or virtue signal about all these different things, we are inherently drawing the focus to ourselves.
Yeah. Well, then it's not actually about us.
Yeah. It's not actually being countercultural. I think about David flourishing in the land, because I go, that is ultimately the call that Revelation presents to us, is that we have to both recognize that we have a different citizenship and try to be the best citizens of possible of this current kingdom. Yep. But I think what can trip a lot of people up is, I love this point that Scott made yesterday about folks who have been called the Antichrist, even though the Antichrist isn't in Revelation.
Not in Revelation.
And that he then says, or certain U.S. presidents, because whatever party you voted for, you're thinking of a different one.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's been happening for decades.
Yes. And that this isn't a new problem, because I think one of the things that particularly social media, but also just this current moment has exasperated is it's allowed people to feel like it's never been worse.
Yeah.
And there is unique challenges and unique roles for the church and Christians to call out current evils and current atrocities, for sure.
Yep.
But I think there's a moral clarity that happens when you call those things out, when you're able to have that long view in mind.
Yeah. When we say that Babylon is timeless, that means that this isn't the worst it's ever been.
Yeah.
This is just another iteration of Babylon.
Yeah.
And Babylons in the world all
Correct.
Competing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there is some comfort in that, mm-hmm. while also holding the tension that God's story is going somewhere. Mm-hmm. God's story is going to culminate in a destruction of Babylon and a resurrection of a new world.
Yeah.
And that's going to happen eventually, but that doesn't mean that we're living in it right now, or that this is the worst it's ever been, because it's been a lot worse in a lot of other times.
And I think it's important for us as folks who belong to the church to recognize the damage that the speculative approach to Revelation has caused for our witness.
And I think, Scott McKnight said it in his sermon, but it's also something that I've been pulling through these other resources as well, of this question of what does your interpretation of Revelation do for you and do for our discipleship?
Yeah.
And I think speculative decoding methods of interpreting Revelation, for me and what I've seen in others, is very fear based and paralyzing.
Yeah.
I have a friend whose dad in the 70s sold all of his belongings and slept on the floor of his friend's house because he thought the world was ending. That wasn't a decision. It wasn't he sold all those things and he moved to another country because he was called to be a missionary.
Right.
That's a different story.
Yeah.
He sold all his things because he was the world is ending and I don't need them and I just need to wait for Jesus to come back. The story of Revelation is not wait for me to come back.
Yeah.
The story of Revelation is come out of Babylon because I'm doing a new thing and you're to be my witnesses in the middle of that.
Yeah. There's folks who hear that call from you and feel well, it's Elisabeth's job to go be a witness. It's my job is to be a part of a church that is credibly being a witness. My job is to write a check. And those things are part of it, like we're saying. But what I'm curious about is how you distinguish between the role of an individual to call out Babylon in whatever they define Babylon to be, versus the role of more of a like church.
Well, the Bible says Babylon to be clear.
Great. Say more about that. Start there. I guess I started there in my answer.
In whatever they see Babylon to be.
Yeah.
But like the Bible does define what Babylon is.
Great.
So like it's not a relative.
Babylon absolutely.
Is Ross because he's being mean to me.
Right.
Like Babylon is those who execute injustices.
Yeah.
And that's well defined.
Yeah.
So I'm just
no. That's really good.
It's not just like, oh, we're finding Babylon in all of these different places. Like Revelation gives us a lens to say, this is of God and this is not. And the things that are not are part of the world of Babylon and the dragon.
So in that framing, like you talk about of like Team Lamb versus Team Dragon.
Yeah. Yep.
What I'm curious about is there is a level of discernment required.
Yes.
Where you have to go, this is clearly Team Dragon.
Yep.
But what is my role in Team Dragon?
Yep.
What is my role in a genocide in Gaza?
Yeah. Yeah. I think, where you started that question in terms of like, okay, sometimes we want to just say, oh, it's the pastor's job to be the witness. It's that like really old Christian's job to be a witness because like they know more than me.
Yeah.
That is an incomplete understanding of what it means to follow Jesus. And not just Revelation, the whole story of the Bible is calling us to be faithful to God alone. That's the entire story of the Bible over and over again. And that's why I think like reading Revelation from that perspective of saying, how do I be a better disciple, is in alignment with how we read the rest of Scripture.
Yeah.
And so that helps. Revelation's just tying us to some bigger, larger, heavier themes, but it's doing the same thing, that if we claim to follow Jesus, then we will be on Team Lamb. And our lives will look like the Lamb, will look like sacrifice and forgiveness, and will look like resisting the forces of oppression and injustice and evil. And that's the call of disciples, of anyone who claims to follow Jesus. And the challenge within Revelation, Revelation doesn't cut corners. That's why people are so uncomfortable with it. That's why I'm so uncomfortable with it.
Yeah.
Is like, it is very clear that if you are not on Team Lamb, you're on Team Dragon. And to be on Team Lamb means that you are willing to resist the forces of evil in full allegiance to Christ.
Yeah.
Materially, spiritually, with your whole self. And that's a big deal.
Yeah.
That's a big challenge, because it really roots down to the core of our faith, that if we say and proclaim that Jesus is Lord, then he's Lord over all parts of our life. Not just that we give financially to the mission of God, but we give of our minds and our mouths and the words that we say and the ways that we live our life, the actions that we take, all of it.
Yeah.
All of it matters to God.
Yeah. I think what's so helpful there for me and how you describe that is there's a difference between selling more things and moving because we feel like God was like, hey, you're going to go be a missionary. Mm-hmm. And the awareness required to make a call like that be even heard. Because I think sometimes what folks wind up falling into this trap of is waiting for someone else to tell them what Babylon is.
Yeah.
Instead of being faithful in their studies of Scripture, being faithful in how they live out their relationship with Jesus, where Babylon becomes abundantly clear.
Mm-hmm.
And then the question becomes, what do we do about it?
Yeah. I think Babylon becomes clear in our midst when we're in community because we're hearing from others. Because the reality is that when you're living in Babylon, you can benefit from Babylon.
Right, where we started, yeah.
And so if you have others who are telling a story that's different, you begin to understand the ways that others are being affected by Babylon. And also when we're talking about like studying scripture, you need other people to be able to help you to identify and understand, because like I said, like Revelation is just layers upon layers of these biblical references. If you have other people that have read more than you, together you can read and understand in a much deeper way. And then you also can discern collectively and say, what does this mean? What do we do? Because there's not a one size fits all of like, this is what it means and this is what you do now to resist Babylon. Like,
right.
I mean, worship is an answer.
Yeah.
Worship is certainly an answer because of the formational aspect of songs, but also worship in the ways we think about how we live our life in service to others.
Yeah.
Both of those are themes that overlap in Revelation of like, what's the response of the believer to worship. But what do we do as we wait for the culmination? We worship and we witness.
Thank you for listening to the Encounter Faith podcast. This podcast is a service of G. Shep Productions from Good Shepherd Lutheran Church in Naperville, Illinois. All rights reserved. If you're in the area, we'd love to meet you on a Sunday morning at our 9 a.m. or 10:45 services. At Good Shepherd, we are inviting everyone to walk together in the calling of Christ for a life of eternal impact. This podcast is produced and hosted by me, Ross Cochran, and our theme song is Wake the Earth by 1111 Worship. Thank you for listening. We'll talk again soon.